In the last episode of The Bad Batch, while Crosshair and Omega are trying to learn some coping mechanisms for dealing with what potentially could be a serious and life-threatening neurological order.
Now, adjust your position and breathe.
Hunter and Wrecker are trying to figure out what exactly Royce Hemlock's M-count experiment is and why he's pursuing Omega for it. With their fixer Sid out of the picture and their information guy Tech gone, the Bad Batch contact an old pirate friend named Fee Genoa.
Word is, certain Class 1 bounty hunters have been retrieving M-count targets for the Empire.
The Bad Batch had encountered a few bounty hunters throughout their journey, including an individual named Fennec Shand. She was new to the game, but extremely competent at her job. When Cad Bane kidnapped Omega on behalf of the Kaminoan Prime Minister, Fennec Shand proved to be a pretty good match for him in close quarters fighting. Fennec Shand is a deadly warrior, yes, but she is also predictable, as she seems to be driven mainly by credits. She doesn't know much about the M-count program, but she can direct Bad Batch to the bounty hunter who is chasing those marks. But in exchange for that information, Hunter and Wrecker have to help bring down a mark.
Sylar Saris, the slayer of Ordo Eris. One of the slipperiest marks around.
A cool bit of lore knowledge, Sylar Saris' people, the Yamri, sort of created General Grievous after they started a genocidal war of conquest against his people, the Kalish. But anyway, after completing a thoroughly dangerous mission in the Star Wars version of the Everglades, Hunter and Wrecker are left without any reward and without the information they came for.
You promised us information.
I didn't say I had it on me, but I'll get it.
That's not what we agreed on.
You can either fight me or trust me. Take your pick.
Hunter was always a really poor negotiator, and now he puts himself in a very disadvantaged position. He is completely dependent on how honest Fennec Shand is. And like I said before, this woman is mostly driven by credits. I just wonder if she sees burning the Bad Batch as a profitable move. And of course, seconds after Fennec Shand leaves the clones behind, she gets into contact with the mysterious individual on the comms.
I just finished a job with some clones. They were asking about the Empire's M-count bounties. What can you tell me? I'm sure you can track them down easily enough. I'll send you what I have.
A lot to dissect here. I mean, for instance, you notice how she puts an emphasis on the word clones.
I just finished a job with some clones.
The pause before the word clones seems to indicate that Fennec Shand wants to put more emphasis on the word clones. It could be that she doesn't like clones. Maybe she knows that the M-count experiment is somehow related to clones. Those are all possibilities. What is certain is, though, Fennec Shand kind of follows up on her word to Hunter. She immediately asks this mysterious contact of hers about the M-count experiment.
They were asking about the Empire's M-count bounties. What can you tell me?
Now, we don't exactly hear what the mysterious voice is saying, but based on Fennec Shand's answer, we can gather some hints about what they might have said.
I'm sure you can track them down easily enough. I'll send you what I have.
I believe instead of explaining to Fennec Shand what the M-count experiment was, this mysterious voice is instead curious about who these clones are and where she can meet them. There also is a generally sinister vibe here with the music that makes it seem like Fennec Shand is about to give the Bad Batch up to this mysterious voice. As a morally gray character, we can expect basically anything from her at this point. Now, I personally am almost certain that the mysterious person Fennec Shand is talking to is Asajj Ventress. The reason being, Asajj Ventress was clearly seen in the trailers of the final season of The Bad Batch. It was one of the bigger reveals Disney had planned for this last season, and we've basically seen no sign of her, and it's been halfway through the season already. Asajj Ventress is an extremely important character in the Clone Wars timeline and also a favorite of Dave Filoni's, although Dave Filoni is a bit removed from the creative process for The Bad Batch. And while her story did end with her death in the excellent Dark Disciple novel, in recent interviews, The Bad Batch's supervising director, Brad Raw, did indicate that The Bad Batch would stay true to the story of the Dark Disciple and keep a lot of the elements from that novel, but also somehow keep Asajj Ventress alive, which is definitely a very interesting and important hint on why Asajj Ventress will be appearing, and specifically why she cares about the M-count experiment. For those of you who didn't follow the Clone Wars TV series, Asajj Ventress has one of the most messed up backstories in this period of time. I mean, she's mistreated, abused, and used by almost every person who she runs across, and these are all people who are supposed to be her mentor. Born a highly Force-sensitive child in a Night Sister clan on Dathomir, Asajj Ventress was ripped from her sisters as an infant, when her mother was forced to give her away to a crime lord named Halstead in order to save her clan. Now, Halstead is kind to Asajj Ventress, but what he really wants from her is a deadly assassin or bodyguard. When Ventress turned 6, Halstead would get killed in a pirate uprising, and a Jedi Knight by the name of Kai Narek bumps into the young grieving child and takes pity on her. Kai Narek would end up training Asajj Ventress for 2 decades in the Jedi arts, but the two would never leave Ratatak and venture to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, so she was never officially registered as a Jedi. But tragedy would strike again as her master would also get struck down by pirates, leaving Asajj Ventress alone again. Now, eventually, Asajj Ventress would be discovered by Count Dooku and trained in the ways of the Sith. Dooku promised her more power than she could ever imagine, and just a few years into the war, Count Dooku would be forced to get rid of Asajj Ventress by his own master Sidious, who feared her growing power.
I can sense her powers growing stronger. I would hate to think you are training your own Sith apprentice to destroy me.
To make matters worse, Dooku would betray Asajj Ventress right in the middle of the Battle of Solus as she was dogfighting 2 very powerful Jedi Knights in her starfighter. Asajj would barely survive Dooku's treachery and be forced to go on the run again. This was an exile not all that different in spirit to the one that Darth Sidious's own former Dathomiri apprentice Maul went through as well. Now, with nowhere left to run, Asajj Ventress would reconnect with her Dathomiri sisters, led by the matriarch Mother Talzin. Together, Asajj would attempt to kill Dooku a few more times. This, of course, would piss off Darth Sidious, who, using the Separatist droid army, would crush the Night Sisters, leaving Asajj Ventress once again, for the 5th time in her life, alone. It was at that time that Asajj Ventress would turn to the independent occupation of bounty hunting to sustain herself. It took her 5 different instances to finally realize that you can really only depend on yourself. Other organizations will either betray you, hold you back, or in the case of the Night Sisters, be too weak to handle the enemies that have been arrayed against you. Equally as important, Asajj Ventress has also managed to extinguish the hatred and anger that has driven her for so many years. She's able to think a lot more rationally, not like a Sith. And this was not easy to do, mind you, especially for a person who had been orphaned and abandoned so many times. Her hatred of Dooku when he abandoned her must have been exceptionally potent. But I think losing her entire tribe, seeing all the destruction that her anger caused, finally made her realize that the Sith way was just not the way for her. And in the Dark Disciple novel, when Jedi Master Quinlan Vos approaches Asajj Ventress to kill Dooku, it's not revenge that necessarily drives her anymore. She instead sees just how dangerous Dooku is and how detrimental his presence is to the wider galaxy. And even though she trains Quinlan Vos to use the dark side in order to defeat Dooku, she does warn him of the shortfalls of the dark side. She also tells Quinlan Vos that she no longer is a Sith. Instead, she merely sees the dark side of the Force as a tool she can use. The transformation of Ventress from a screaming, hairless banshee to this much wiser individual is quite remarkable. You see, like the rest of us, as a child, Ventress sought the safety, warmth, and comfort of home. But she was unfortunate. People took advantage of this desire from her, and she would live her entire life for other people and never for herself. And for a while, this mistreatment of Asajj Ventress just created more anger and hatred, which fueled her and did make her feel more powerful. But ultimately, this feeling was completely empty. Asajj Ventress ultimately realized that this path was too destructive and the dark side was too dangerous to fall into completely. The destruction of her Night Sister clan in a weird way finally freed Asajj Ventress so that she could start living her own life. Instead of finding a group or an ideology that could protect her, she started just looking out for herself. And finally, she started developing her own worldviews and values and principles. While money does drive Asajj, she's not nearly as shallow as she would like the viewers to think. She does have principles and causes she cares for, and it's all very much related to her own past, her own suffering. This is often overlooked aspect of Asajj Ventress's personality, something that would really kind of evolve into a stronger kind of force as she gets older. If you take a look at one of her first bounty hunter missions, for instance, she joins up with a young Boba Fett to retrieve an important package for some local despot on the planet of Korzite. When Asajj Ventress finds out that the package is actually a young bride being held against her will,
I never asked to be ripped away from my home, from my family. You'll never know what it's like.
this really pisses her off, and so when she finally finishes the mission and the local despot opens the package expecting his betrothed, it's actually just Boba Fett hogtied. Asajj Ventress gets to walk away with the bounty, and more importantly, begins to build a value system of her own choosing. And believe it or not, this is an extremely powerful value system, far more powerful than what the Jedi taught Asajj, what the Sith taught her, and even what the Night Sisters taught her. And that's because this value system was something that Asajj Ventress had to create based on her own suffering. All these lessons are very truthful to who she is. And that value system would grow at the end of the Clone Wars, especially in the Dark Disciple. And I guess now at the end of the Dark Disciple, when Asajj Ventress dies and is laid in the waters of Dathomir, she somehow comes back to life, and now is still working as a bounty hunter. And I really believe there's no way that our heroine, after going through all that bullshit throughout the Clone Wars, would just return and work as a pawn for the Empire, kidnapping Force-sensitive children. It kind of goes against her entire trajectory as a character. However, as a Force user, she will understand what M-counts are, and as someone who understands who the Emperor is and what he's after, I think Asajj Ventress is one of the few people in the galaxy left that truly understands what Palpatine is trying to do, without even acquiring that much information. And this is something that Asajj Ventress is really not going to like. She's gonna fight against this. I mean, if she looks back at her own experiences, she'll realize that the Crime Lord Halstead didn't want her as a daughter. They wanted her Force sensitivity. They wanted her to be an assassin. The Jedi Master Narek didn't want her as a daughter either. He wanted an apprentice who could help him fight crime and bring balance to the Force. And Count Dooku was also after the same thing. He wanted a powerful Force user. And even Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters in their own way valued her more because of her Force abilities. So I can imagine Asajj Ventress is going to have a lot of sympathy for someone like Omega, a young, innocent child who really doesn't understand her own powers and value yet, who is constantly being sought after by people who just want to exploit her because of what's in her blood. And so when this mysterious figure asks Fennec Shand about the Bad Batch, I think they want information from these clones. Fennec is clearly loyal and close to the mysterious figure, and even though she does ask her about the M-Count program as promised to Hunter, she puts the ball in the mysterious Force's hands rather than the Bad Batch. She allows the mysterious figure to know the Bad Batch is after her so that she can check them out by herself. If this mysterious figure is Asajj Ventress, I believe that she's seeking out the Bad Batch for more information about the M-Count experiment. She probably doesn't know that, Omega is who she's gonna find at the, end of her journey here. And I think once she realizes that she has to kidnap a young clone like Omega, she probably won't do it. And better yet, when you introduce someone like Asajj Ventress to the fold with her lightsaber abilities, that creates some room for some very spectacular enemies. I mean, Asajj Ventress, even during the Clone Wars, when there were still thousands of Jedi left in the galaxy, was considered a very high-level combatant. Not Tier 1, that's where Yoda, Windu, Skywalker, Sidious, and Dooku belong, but she's basically just a level below them. She's a serious fighter. But with the Order 66 purge, as a survivor of that incident, now Asajj Ventress has very much moved up the ranks a lot. She could be one of the top Force users in the galaxy now, and probably the only one who has dabbled in both Jedi and Sith teachings. Usually when it comes to issues relating to the Force, the Empire sends out their Inquisitors. We've seen them quite a lot in the Rebel series and also in the Kenobi series, and we even see them appear in the Tales of the Jedi and much later in the timeline in the Ahsoka series. I'm not exactly sure if the Empire has the Inquisitor program operational just like a year after Order 66, which is when the Bad Batch takes place, but I really wouldn't be surprised if someone were introduced in the Bad Batch season finale. Or better yet, I wouldn't be surprised if Palpatine is forced to create the Inquisitors solely because of how powerful a legacy-era Force user like Asajj Ventress can be against a bunch of normies. Anyway, I'm pretty pumped for the next few episodes of The Bad Batch because it's very clear that Asajj Ventress is going to be appearing over the horizon very soon. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, the democracy. I'll see you next time.